So, hello everyone, welcome back to this nice little workshop. My name is Savvy, and I teach voice feminization, masculinization, and also androgynization. Today, we'll be doing just that, learning the basics and some health guidelines on how to practice and how to best make use of your voice to modify its gendered perception. Now, I need to make something clear really quickly, is that voice, just like any muscle, needs to be warmed up and needs to be taken off properly, right? You don't want to, go run a marathon without stretching your legs. Well, the same here goes for your voice. You want to be making sure that your voice is relaxed and properly hydrated before you start practicing. So make sure that if you end up doing some of these exercises alongside us today, that you make sure that you have some water nearby and that you have something to drink. Okay, I see some people drinking. Very good, very good. Okay, so another thing that I should mention is that certain medications and certain things that you might do in life can be very drying to the voice. For example, spironolactone is a type of medication that can be very drying to the vocal folds. Of course, don't stop taking medication that you're supposed to take, but instead try to practice your training around and trying to avoid practicing right after taking those medications. Of course, smoking or drinking alcohol or even coffee can be somewhat dehydrating to the voice, so make sure that you don't work right after drinking a cup of coffee. It's probably not going to help you. The general rule of thumb I have is if you drink something or if you do something that is really dehydrating, make sure that you drink plenty of water next to it, and you should be fine most of the time. It's just really for like most optimal practice. Remember also, if you end up feeling any vocal fatigue, right? If you feel any, if you've noticed that your higher pitches are harder to match, or perhaps your lower pitches, depends on wherever you want to go with your voice, right? If you notice that some of these pitches are noticing, or that it gets really hard to achieve them, or you normally would achieve them, then you're probably starting to have some vocal fatigue. So be extremely mindful of what your voice is capable of doing, so that you don't push yourself over the edge when you are already like straining your voice and like putting it through too much effort. Okay. That being said, so what I will be doing today is have two people up on stage who want to feminize their voices and two people who want to masculinize their voices. So we'll have about 10 minutes-ish up on stage for each person, and then we'll have something like 10 minutes at the end for some questions. All right? Now, for this session, please do stay muted, at least for when you are in the audience. There will be a time right after this explanation where we'll be doing some warm-up, and you're more than welcome to unmute yourself during that. But for most of the session, please do stay muted. You will have the opportunity to unmute and ask questions at the end if you do not make it up on stage. All right, so let's have a little rundown of what voice exactly is, so we kind of all start on the same baseline. So what exactly is voice? Well, we base ourselves off the power source filter model. The power source filter model refers to, very simply, the voice. And so we start the voice by pushing air from our lungs. That will power our voice. And the more or less air you push, the louder or quieter a voice you will have. And I'm skipping a lot over this because we only have so much time, but it will determine quite a bit of your voice in terms of qualities and loudness. Now, something else that happens is when that air moves up, it will then arrive where your Adam's apple is. We call this place the larynx, right? The larynx is where the source sound will be produced. You push that air, and then you will have some flaps which are going to vibrate. These are your vocal folds. You might have heard them be called vocal cords. Unfortunately, they're not like guitar chords. As much as I like that to be true, it's not. They're more like little flesh meat flaps that vibrate really quickly, several hundred times per second actually, which is also why you want to be very careful with your voice and be sure to use it when it's hydrated and don't push it past the point of being too tired. Okay, now the source sound is produced once you close the vocal folds You push the air, they start to vibrate, and then a sound is produced. That sound will then be bouncing around this entire space, which we call the resonance chamber. In the PSF model in the PSF model, the filter is the resonance chamber. And this is very important because we all have different spaces available.
A really big space will yield a much hollower, much darker voice, whereas
a smaller space will yield a much smaller, much brighter voice. And this is where a lot of the meat of what we are going to practice today is going to lie. Generally, when people think of, oh, I want to feminize my voice, I'm going to go da 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 really high in pitch. And if I want to masculinize my voice, I'm going to
da 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 go really low in pitch, right?
But I always forget about the fact that the filter is really important. And this is the buzzword that you've seen used around everywhere, the resonance, right? So careful, because resonance has like a physical meaning. Here, resonance is more of a quick word that we use to refer to the resonance chamber, to the space in which the sound will be able to bounce around, right? So yeah, we call this a resonance. We call this the vocal tract size, because this is the vocal tract. And if the size is really big, you get a dark voice,
really dark voice.
If the size is really small, you get a really bright voice. Okay? And that's pretty much all that you need to know about voice. You push air, you create a sound, that sound bounces around, and depending on how you filter that sound, you'll get, a more masculine, more feminine, a more dark, or a more bright voice. Okay? So that's how voice works. Now, I said before at the very start of this lesson, or of this workshop rather, I should say, that you want to make sure that your voice is always warmed up, at least when it comes to practicing. So how do we warm up our voices? Well, think about it this way. If you push air from your lungs, and then it sets the vocal folds in vibration, the air only comes from below. Actually, I probably can show you something in this vein. So basically, if the slide has loaded, I'm going to assume it loaded for most of you. You can see that your vocal folds, this is like a side cut on your vocal folds. Your vocal folds always vibrate from the air coming from below, right? I mean, you could technically speak by breathing in air, but then you would sound like a robot or really strange. So most people probably don't want to do this. But I'm just saying this just to explain why we want to do the softies. The semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. What are they? Well, they allow us to counter the otherwise pressure that only comes from below the vocal folds. So for example, by doing a Z sound, zzz, we kind of block out the airflow and the sound with our tongue and teeth by doing a Z sound, right? Perhaps you've already heard some teachers and you're like, oh, why does this teacher do they must be crazy? But there's a reason for that. It's because if you use your lips and have them in the way, then you create a counter pressure. And that counter pressure is important because otherwise you only have the pressure from below your vocal folds, right? So by closing the space here a little bit, we can allow for a more even pressure for your vocal folds to warm up in. And this is what we will do really quickly here. So for this, you're more than welcome to unmute, and let's try this together. I will do a sound, and then I will count to 3, and you will do the sound afterwards. All right? Let's try this out. 1, 2, 3. Very good. And now let's try this back down. 1, 2, 3. Very good. Okay, so that's the kind of warm-up you want to do. Maybe it might have felt tricky because you're not used to producing voice with occluding, like your mouth by doing like the zzz sound. But They're quite important as they allow us to do this in a more relaxed manner. You might find that maybe the Z sound is not for you. There's other sounds that you can use that also create that kind of occlusion, like a j sound, as in like a jar, or the V sound, as in voice, for example. You can also just do an O sound, like oh, because the rounded lips already are going to kind of close the mouth a little bit and help you a little bit. So it's interesting to try different types of SOVTEs, of semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, or just vocal warm-up if you want to make it simple. And they're always recommended to do like 1 to 2 minutes every day when you wake up. If you can also, and have the time to do so, also try to do them in the evening before sleeping, just so that you kind of like relax your voice after a full day of effort and of using your voice. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So please make sure that your mics are muted. And now I'll have someone up on stage who wants to work on masculinizing their voices. If you are interested, raise your hand or jump in place, or you can also use the hand emoji. So is there anyone interested in masculinizing their voices? I don't see many hands today. Where are they all gone? Oh, yes, you. I see you over there. I can't read your name quite. Razalor? Yeah, come up on stage. Come on, come on. Applause for Razalor.
Hello, I have been here once before for, like, on stage.
Oh, okay. I see. Well, I haven't seen many hands, so this will be you today. So let's try this. I don't remember seeing you up on stage, so perhaps you were doing this with one of my colleagues?
No, it was just probably like a while ago for you.
Okay, yeah, perhaps it was. I
Yeah,
don't
I
remember
definitely remember
those
it being
wings.
many weeks
Okay,
ago.
fair enough. All right. We have 10 minutes starting from now. Let's go. All right, so it has been many weeks. I'm afraid I don't exactly remember everyone's avatars, but how has your voice progress been going? Have you been able to practice with some of the exercises we did last?
I haven't really gotten much time to practice, but one thing I do think I need to work on is my voice kind of goes up to fem a lot, like when because, you know, I kind of lose track of how I'm talking. And also probably like safety concerns and stuff like that.
And safety concerns, as in how you use your voice? Have you encountered any
Yeah.
vocal damage before, or what's happened?
No, just like, I don't know, just because I feel like I have to go up to a higher voice because of, you know, people. It's just hard to
Okay,
get out of
I
a
got you.
natural state of talking higher.
Right. So, okay. No safety concerns other than like the social safety you meant to say?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So that was your concern about safety, and your first concern was about your voice kind of keeps going higher towards like a higher pitch?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at this. So, as we said before, voice is a lot of things, and it's also pitch, right? I did say that pitch was not the most important thing, but it's also important because if you have like a really high pitch, it's hard to masculinize a voice, and if you have a really low pitch, it's hard to feminize that voice. So we have to look at pitch and at intonation, like what it is. It's like a melody, right? I mean, we don't all speak like that, right? We don't like do singy-songy types of voices or of pitch motions and movements, but we do have those kind of pitch motions, right? If I say, hello, how are you? Then if I remove all words, it's more like da-da, da-da-da, right? So the same kind of goes for your voice. You have to analyze and look at your voice like it's a melody. Perhaps your melody has a tendency to go higher up, right? Your intonation has a tendency to go higher. Perhaps it's at the end of sentences. Perhaps it's on certain words. Perhaps you use higher pitches to inflect. I know I do in my feminine voice, right? So we can take a look at all of these different things. first off, I want to see. Let's do a slide from your highest pitch down to your lowest pitch. Okay? So from oh, give it a try.
Oh.
Oh, so around E3, okay, pretty solid. Can you hold your voice there and say something like, oh, hello, hello?
Oh, hello, hello.
Okay, very good. Oh, hello, hello, very good. Now let's try and see if we can make your resonance a bit darker. Do you remember how we do this?
I might have forgotten. I haven't been here in like the last few weeks, I think. Been busy.
It's okay. Let's do this together. So I'll say the sentence, pat that cat, not pat fat cat, pat that cat, okay? And we're going to say it on a whisper, like this. Pat that cat. And then what we will be doing is bring that whisper darker, right? The whisper is going to tell us information on how big or how small your vocal tract is. So, pat, 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 pat. Try to go darker. Give it a try.
Pat, 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 pat. Wow. Sorry, messed up a bit.
It's okay. It's okay. Go slow. I noticed that you push a lot of air, like pa, pa, pa. Try to push less air. There's no need to push as much. You can just go like more gentle, like pat, 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 pat. Give it another try.
Pat, 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 pat. It's harder for me to whisper it darker.
No, it's okay. You're getting there, right? Like you went from pat to pat, but like that is darker, right? If you compare two different whispers, you can notice really quickly that they also are gendered in a way, right? Pat that cat is like a really feminine whisper, whereas
But that cat is a really masculine whisper.
and I know that you struggle, but like it's like more a thing of habit, right? Like you're fighting the older behavior, which kind of pulled you up to a brighter resonance, right? To a smaller size. But our goal here is to stay at the darker size and try to phonate there, to use our voice at this bigger size. Okay? Let's try it again. Pat, 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 pat.
Pat, 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 pat.
That's very good. Okay, and from there, can you say, pat, pat that cat?
Pat, pat that cat.
Okay, good. So you did pat, 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 and then you did pat, pat that cat. So you did go a little bit brighter, right? So here there's a little bit of an issue, right? Is that you may be able to reach the darkest whisper as you do like a slide, like you have the reference point of, oh, that's a really bright pat, 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 pat. And you have the reference point of,
Oh, that's a really dark pat, pat, pat.
right? But the problem arises that if you start with a slide, pat, pat, pat,
Pat.
then stop, forget about it a little bit, and then try to go back for it. Even if you had like pat really dark at first, you might set maybe pat like to like a brighter pat instead. So it's good to practice the onset first to kind of like get a feeling for what the darker resonance is like. So we're going to try this, right? I want you to like pay close attention to how your body feels, okay? Oh, sorry. Blah. So I want you to make sure that you feel where you are at with your voice, okay? So if you're like here, pat, pat, I want you to like feel where your Adam's apple is. Even if you don't have like a very prominent one, you have an Adam's apple, right? Your larynx should be around here. You can actually maybe feel it with your fingers. Can you feel somewhat of the thumb?
I can kind of feel it a little bit.
Nice.
Like I
And
know,
so
I
as
know
you-
it's there.
Okay.
Like it's
So
kind of
you can-
visible, but not really.
It's okay. So now
Yeah.
you have that knowledge of that. You can actually keep your hand there, right? And then you can try and pat, 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 go darker and feel it trail down. And then kind of notice that darkness. Notice how it feels, right? Try to remember that position. And then reset back to whatever voice you had. Give it a try. Okay, good. And now you're here. You just freeze that position. You stay there. You keep your larynx down, and then let it reset, right? Back to wherever it wants to go. Okay?
Is that how I do that?
Yeah, sort of. That's kind of where your resonance is at right now. And now I want you to think again of that position of the darker, of that lower larynx, right? And just by thinking about it, you can actually try perhaps to move it back down just by, right? You can try and move the muscle before producing sound, right? Trying to aim for that same spot. So this time, instead of saying pat, 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 and doing each and every step, you would want to do pat, pat, right? This in between time, I was taking the time to think and feel the larynx move down, feel the size get bigger. Okay? Try that out.
Oh, hold on, can you run that by me one more time? I got distracted by a noise in the house.
It's okay. So follow after me. Pat. Pat. Okay? Pat, pat, pat. Pat, pat, pat. Very good. You remember that position? Pat, that's darker. Okay, and then you can go back up to wherever you were before. Okay, it's like your current voice. Okay? And now what you want to do is jump directly from pat, pat. Try this out. Pat, pat. Very good. Okay. So now, just like speak with me. Just say like, hello, how are you?
Like whisper it or just normal?
No, you're speaking right now, right?
Okay.
Now you've reset the position. You're back to your current voice, and now just pat, pat. Okay, good. Right. So you were able to go much darker without thinking about it. Was it as dark as the one that you showed me before? Maybe not as much, right? But that's up to you to kind of like record your voice, listen back to your voice, figure out if was this pat as dark as pat? Yes or no? Was it? Not quite. I'll try to reset the sound again. Pat, 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 pat. Okay, I know this one is dark. Pat. I do something else for a little bit. Then I try to think again about it. Kind of like try to get your brain working to remember that position, both vocally and mentally and physically. And then pat. Try and use it again. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so I'm sorry we didn't get the time to focus on pitch here too much, but I think that here a little focus on resonance definitely wouldn't hurt here, especially given that you kind of didn't remember that specific part, or perhaps we didn't go as much in depth into it, but definitely use that as a tool, right? If you can do this more often, then you will become more efficient at using your voice, right? At using the darker resonance. And kind of like, especially if you have this concern of safety, right? If most of the day you must be like talking up here and whatever with people, and when you're like safe, you can just go back down to
like a masculine voice or whatever, right?
Well, then it's a really interesting and useful tool to have to be able to set directly from whatever voice you have right now down to a much darker sound. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Should probably also get some water or something to drink, because
probably.
I've been a bit thirsty. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I could try and practice later. After
Hell yeah, good idea. Awesome. Well, our time is up here, Ray Sailor. I'm sorry, but congrats on making it up on stage and doing this in front of everyone. And applause for Ray Sailor. Okay, now I'll be having someone up on stage who wants to learn to feminize their voices. I already saw you. Okay, a werewolf, move up on stage. Come on, come on, come on. Oh, you can go here too. That works too. Yeah, it's a little bit tall. You want to go to the stairs. There we go. Okay, applause for a werewolf. Hello, welcome.
Hi,
I don't know. Oh, hi. Hello.
I'm sorry, I have some technical issues here. 1 second.
No worries. We got 10 minutes starting now. Okay, welcome.
Yeah.
What do I call you? Wolf
Hi.
or aware or?
You can just call me Alex. I'm been practicing my voice for about 6 months now, and I feel that it's most of the time in VR chat it's passing, and I'm trying to get it to the point where it's passing more often IRL. And one thing someone said to me in a VR chat instance the other night was that my voice passed initially, but I was speaking with more of a head voice than a chest voice. But it wasn't consistent. When I asked them, "What do you mean by a chest voice?" You're like, "You're doing it now," and I was confused by that. So I wonder, like, what is the difference between a head voice and a chest voice? Is it pitch? Is it vocal fry versus breathiness? Is it a combination of a lot of things, or does it even matter?
It doesn't matter. Chest voice and
Okay.
head voice are terms that come from the classical singing, right? So like it comes from like
Okay,
a more
yeah.
operatic, more classical singing perspective and view. And we as teachers, especially in the trans community, we really don't like using those terms all too much because they are
Okay.
loaded with like a lot of, how do you say, like myth and issues, right? Like head voice, what does it mean? Is it a voice that vibrates in your head? It's a voice that is not produced by your head. Like everything is produced in the neck for all I know. So like that doesn't make anything. It should be called the neck voice for all I care, right? And the chest voice, what is
Okay.
it? It's like you feel your chest vibrate. It's like I never feel my chest vibrate. Like this is right now like I guess a chest voice, but not really. There is, however, like another scientific like measurement that we use, or not measurement, but rather like different kind of mechanisms that we do recognize kind of change the way we speak. We will talk about laryngeal vibratory mechanisms, or LVMs. And that's like a mouthful, and really only scientists care about this term, but we talk sometimes about M1 and M2, which are sometimes called chest voice and head voice, right? The problem is chest voice and head voice are really just types of M1s, and head voice is a type of M2, just like flageolet or falsetto is another type of use of M2, right? So it's very specific, and not every teacher agrees on this. But M1 and M2, it's just, okay, M1 is a full-bodied vibration of the vocal folds, and M2 is a little more of a hollow sound that generally is heard more at higher pitches, right? Yeah, there is a little difference. There is a difference in texture, most definitely. So if I say, for example, that you have an M2 voice, right? Then in the case of an M2 voice, you know, think Mickey Mouse, for example, like if you talk like all the way up here, like that's the Mickey Mouse voice. That's an M2, right? Some people would say that's head voice or falsetto, and they wouldn't be too wrong. That's kind of what it is. But I don't hear your voice being like M2 quality, right? The problem with saying
thanks.
that, yeah, no worries. I'm just clearing this up, right? Like, not all terminologies, like, not everyone agrees on the same terminology, but at the end of the day, you know, most people speak in the M1 range, right? Like, I speak in the M1 range, you speak in the M1 range. This is an M1 voice.
This is an M1 voice, right?
And, you know, it's not really like a thing of gendered, that you really gender those voices based on the mechanism. In certain cases, you might actually want to use M2, or rather, better yet, a mix of M2 and M1 to kind of allow yourself to use even more of a wider vocal range. So typically, for example, if I say, "Hello, how are you?" that's all in M1. But if I say, hello, how are you? Some of it is in M1, he is in M1, low is in M2, and then back down to M1, right? It allows me to use more of my range, right? And you definitely don't want to shy away from it. The only issue that you can encounter with M2, for example, is, if your voice breaks, for example, right? That can happen quite often if you do, or even on the way down, right? That voice crack, right? This is what we call the passaggio. It's that middle point between the M1 and M2 range. And it's mostly a misuse of the vocal fold mass, of the closure of the vocal folds, and of the airflow. It's kind of a mixture of mechanisms together. And if you ever experienced that kind of stuff, then you might want to look instead at how much vocal fold mass you're putting behind your voice, right? Like, if your voice is really thick, you're more likely to be in M1, right? If your voice is really thin, then you're more likely to be in M2, right? That's a really dumbed down version that's not super precise, but I'm doing with what I have for a limited time here. But yeah, don't worry about your voice being in chest voice or head voice or whatever. If it sounds good, it sounds good, right? That's all that you need to care about.
And
no worries.
From my from listening to me now, is there anything that you'd recommend I work on exercise wise, or?
Not specifically. I mean, if we okay, let's pretend for a second that the person that told you that like you were in chest voice or head voice. What did they say again?
They said I was in head voice for some reason, which was weird because I thought I was talking pretty normally.
So like parts of your voice might be in that M2 range, might be quite high in pitch, and that's fine. But one of the biggest issues that you can get with M2 sometimes is the issue of sounding a little bit too hollow. Let me give you a better explanation with this overly complicated graph. It's not too complicated, but what you can see is that when you're speaking in a femme voice, right, it's like you have a small glass of water, so like a small vocal tract size, right? You raise your larynx and all that good stuff. And then you have your vocal folds vibrating with more or less mass. In the case of a feminine voice, you generally use less vocal fold mass as with, a masculine voice, right? So using less mass means that you're not shaving your vocal folds mass away. No, you're just flexing the muscle a little bit less, which results into a more gentle voice, and that fits the smaller space of a feminine vocal tract, of a smaller vocal tract. And so if you sometimes go into M2, you might actually be somewhere in the underfull hollow area, right? So let's say I speak up here, and then suddenly I let my resonance drop a little bit, and now my voice is already a lot more hollow, right? This is like a resonance drop, so it makes my voice sound darker or raw. But there's another way to go hollow or underfull. That would be by reducing the vocal fold mass a lot. So I can stay here and then get really quiet. And now, even if my resonance is really bright, you can tell that it's kind of hollow as well, but it's mostly due to my voice being too thin, right? And that is kind of similar to the Mickey Mouse-ish voice, or kind of similar to a lot of those M2 cartoonish voices.
So and one thing I was going to ask too is that my voice tends to pass better when I'm in a good mood. It's like, hey, how are you doing? I'm doing good, thank you. It's like, oh, I hate work, I hate school, I hate everything, whatever. And it's like, then I just feel like my pitch has kind of drooped down a little bit. Do you have any advice on that? It's speaking when you're kind of in a rough mood or whatever.
I don't know. I don't think moods define the gender of a person. I understand that perhaps if there is some moods that you haven't trained a specific sound on, right? If you're really happy and your laugh ends up being too masculine or too feminine, or if you're angry and your anger causes your vocal folds to become more thick and more heavy and creates a more buzzy sound, that's so annoying, then maybe there's things that, in terms of mood shifts can capture a more masculine sound. So in that case, when I heard you be overjoyed, and then the opposite of life sucks, it's horrible, I didn't hear a
drop in resonance, or
I didn't hear a crazy low down pitch drop, you know? Like, there was none of that. So I don't think there's any issues. I just wanted to kind of
Okay,
like,
thank you.
I just wanted to like say, if we entertain the thought that the other person was right with the head voice talk, right? Then perhaps you might want to watch out. If you are at higher pitches, it's easy to get really thin and really soft, right? So I don't know, like, let's see, I'll have some text here because why not? What if I say, you know, hello, good morning, how are you, right? Like this really high pitch that's like a little bit too hollow, right? So perhaps you'd want to make it more like, hello, good morning, how are you? Same exact pitch.
Good morning,
but
how are
it's
you?
more full. Exactly, right? Hello, good morning, how are you, right? And like if you look at those higher pitches, hello, good morning, right? If you didn't put enough vocal fold mass behind it, you would have hello, good morning, how are you, right? And it sounds very disconnected because you have this M1 voice which has like the proper amount of vocal fold mass, right? It's like thicker vocal folds. And at those higher pitches, you have this like really kind of like really hollow under full voice, right? Not the case with your voice, but perhaps, you know, there's times where, you know, I'm not around, so I don't know what your voice does every time, but you are, and you can try and listen for, okay, does my voice go like a little bit too hollow at times, or is it like properly full just like I want it to be? You know, like you kind of want to ask yourself those questions. Okay?
Thank you.
You were welcome. Applause for a werewolf. Okay. Next up, we'll have someone who wants to work on masculinizing their voice. Okay, you were really fast. Astolfa Ant, come up on stage.
No.
Come on. No. Why did you raise your hand then?
Thought you said feminine, not masculine.
Sorry, feminine is the one after. Okay, masculine, sorry. Did I missay it? Whoops. Masculine voice? No, I thought I saw a hand around here. We only have one person who wants to masculinize their voices. Oh, no. No one. No one at all? Okay. I see a hand. Yes? Where's the hand pointing to? I don't see the person. Please move forward if you're interested. No mind? Okay. All right. Anyone wants to learn to make their voice more androgynous, perhaps? Okay, you're interested in making your voice androgynous? Okay, move up on stage. All right, let's go. Applause for Stolfo. All right, hello. Okay. We got 10 minutes starting now. All right, Astolfo, what is it that you're looking for? I do recognize the name, so I have a hint as to what you want to do with your voice.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, we watched the
Yeah,
anime.
okay.
We okay. So, okay. Well, I guess you're starting from like a more masculine kind of voice, right? And that you want
Yeah,
to go
pretty
towards a
much.
more feminine voice, right?
Yes.
So let's see. Did I already start the time? Yes, I did. Okay, awesome. 10 minutes starting from now. Okay, so are you completely new to this? Is this like the first time you're
yes.
in this workshop? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Have you been able to like listen to some of the things that we did today, some of the exercises, maybe practice along a
I learned
bit?
about resonance and pitch, but resonance is what I'm struggling because I don't understand the concept. The
Okay,
tricks and all that.
what's the concept of resonance? Let's show you a slide that makes a bit more sense. So what you can see up here or up there, doesn't matter, they're the same mirrored slides. Yeah. So what you can see is that, okay, you, I suppose, are a MAB, so assigned male at birth or whatever. I am a horrible assuming person. No, but what I can hear from your voice is that you probably just like me had testosterone affect your voice, right? Or rather, you have a testosterone affected vocal tract. I mean this because whether you're AMAB or AFAB, this can happen to you, right? Like, we're not all equal to hormones, testosterone, etc. So even if you're AMAB, you could have like the highest pitched voice. It can happen. So in the case here of a testosterone affected vocal tract, you can see that the space here is a lot bigger. And I want you to think about it like an instrument. Have you seen what a guitar looks like? It's really big, has like a big body. But if you look at a ukulele, it has like a small body. right? And if you strum the string on the same pitch on both instruments, one is going to sound like dring, the other one's going to sound like dring, like a lot more darker. Exactly. So in the case of your voice, you're most likely dealing with a bigger body, with a bigger vocal tract. But how do I do what I do? Well, we use those sound exploration exercises to help us bring our voice to a smaller size, right? And the technical aspect of it is very simple. Instead of doing and raising our voice on the fly, we remove completely the vibration of the vocal folds. We actually effectively go from having to just having a whisper where the air just passes through the vocal folds. And so once you can hear the whisper, you can hear how dark or how bright your voice is. So
Have a really dark whisper, and you're like masculine. I'm your father.
or whatever. And then if you make your whisper really bright, I'm your mother, or whatever, right? Like it makes your voice a lot brighter. So this is what we try to do. I have a little sentence, pat that cat, because cats are really cute. And so I like to take the dark whisper of pat that cat. And then we take the word pat and we make that word brighter on the whisper. So let's give this a try.
Right.
So I do a pat really dark, like this.
Pot.
Try it out. Awesome. And now we're going to try this.
Pot.
Pat, 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 pat. Very good. And now you notice that you have a really bright pat. Can you say, pat that cat? Awesome. Now you're super bright. You effectively made your vocal tract go from bigger size to a smaller size by raising here the larynx component higher, which results into a smaller space. Congratulations, you've turned from a guitar into a ukulele, at least in terms of how big the space is. And now what we have is a much brighter, much smaller space, but we're still on the whispers. So technically what you did there was the most feminine whisper you've ever done in your life. And it was feminine because it was bright. Right, so pat that cat. Give yourself a pat on the back. All right, so... Yes, no, it's good, it's good. Practice is good. Practice is good. So now what we want to do is make it so that now that we have raised the larynx, right? We want to make it so that the vocal folds come back together. Pat that cat. See? So the way we're going to do this is by closing our vocal folds a little bit. So as you can see perhaps from this slide, your vocal folds kind of like look like it. If I put a camera down your mouth and to shine down your throat, this is what you would be seeing basically. So your vocals are like either really open, like on the whisper, or they're closed, like when you're speaking. Actually, that's a lie. It's more so that when you speak, you're on a balanced side. So that means that your vocal folds open and close several hundred times per second. Okay, and they go between those open and closed positions. The whisper has no closure whatsoever, but phonating and speaking like you normally speak or like I speak right now is a balanced sound. So we want to close the vocal folds, right? So I want you to try this out. 3 steps, whispery to breathy to balanced. Give it a try.
Okay.
Okay, yes, that's it. So you didn't spend too much time on the breathy part, but you still managed to have that sound, right? So you had you ended up on a balanced sound. And here's what's interesting. If you start with a bright whisper, then you end up having a feminine voice. Pat that cat. But if you made that whisper darker at the start, then you end up having a more darker masculine sound. Right? So you have made your whisper bright, and now you bridge from that bright whisper to a bright, balanced sound. Okay? So let's try this together. Pat that cat. Ah. Okay. Yes. Oh,
It's hard, sorry.
you might be cutting off a bit. I'm not sure if you're cutting off because the noise suppression activated or whatever, but just make sure that that is turned off real quick. So like on the quick panel, when I scroll down to microphone, make sure that noise suppression is turned off and that the mic activation threshold is all the way into 0%.
Okay, yeah.
All good. Whew, let's try this again. So you noticed that you had a bit of an issue there, right? Like you did, you went to a really high pitch, right? So it can happen, right? Especially if you're doing like an extremely bright whisper, right? Generally, higher resonances, brighter resonances tend to work better with high pitches. But we want to make sure that we don't go too bright, perhaps. Perhaps just like, let's take it slow, you know? Like, we don't need to go, pat that cat. We can also do, pat that cat, and that is already feminine, right? So, first, try and match my pitch here. Awesome. You notice that this pitch is a bit dark, right? Our goal will be to make it brighter. So from this, same pitch, but brighter. Give it a try.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. I didn't hear you climb up on the whisper. So you did and then you raised the pitch because you raised at the wrong time. You want to raise on the whisper. Okay, let's do this call and response thing, okay? So,
Okay.
pot, 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 pot,
Pot, pot,
pat that cat. Very good. And now,
okay. What?
okay, that works. Yes, and from there I can say, pat that cat.
Pat.
Yes.
Pat that cat.
And that, ladies and gents, and everything in between, that is a femme voice. Pat that cat. And I'll be damned if you think that's not femme. Okay, now let's compare this. Pat that cat. Pat that cat.
Pat that cat.
Yeah. No, you're locked in femme voice forever. Sorry, there's no turning back. You're good. No, but yeah, that's it. That's how you get femme voice. There you go. Now what you want to do is practice it, you know, like use some sentences to kind of practice that, you know, like I like pat that cat, but let's see, has this slide loaded for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you say, pat that cat, and then say, that mad brat sat on that flat mat.
Pat. Pat that cat. That mad brat sat on the flat mat.
Nice. Okay, and then the next step is to break up the monotony a little bit. That mad brat sat on that flat mat. Give it a try.
The What?
What? No, wait. That mad brat sat on that flat mat. Sorry,
okay.
you lost flat on the way. It's cool. That mad brat sat on that flat mat.
That mad brat sat on the flat mat.
Yes, that's really good. Then my brat sat on the flat mat, right? That's very good. Now, you might notice that some of these sentences are made to only have one type of vowel sound. And that is because the position of your tongue and of your larynx is going to be a bit different for every vowel sound, right? For an E sound, right? As in beat, she sees the serene C feeling free. Your tongue is all the way taking all the space in the mouth, right? Where of the ah sound, it's the opposite. It's only your tongue is all the way lowered in your mouth, and you have a very different type of position to assume, right? So that's it. That's Fem Voice. All you have to do now is go out there, practice, use your voice, do some reading. Yes, exactly. Then that rat sat on the flat mat, right? Right now it's monotonous, so it might sound not too natural, which is why you would want to break it, break the intonation a bit, right? That mad brat sat on that flat mat, right? Okay, so no, you're not supposed to. Don't worry. I was just expecting an answer from you. But anyways, that's pretty much our time. So yeah, very solid start, given that you have started from nothing from what you've told me. This is very good. Keep that up. Yeah, just record yourself, listen back to yourself, read some sentences, try to write down what sounds trigger your voice to drop back down to a masculine voice. And yeah, just like that, slowly build up your way to a consistent feminine voice. Okay? Alrighty. Well, applause for Astolfo. Okay, cool. Now we'll have the last person. Okay, you raise your hands. Sifrin, Fem Voice, is it? Yes?
Yes.
All right, up on stage. Come on. Applause for Sifrin. You are just way too fast. All right, let's get started 10 minutes from now. Yippee! Okay. So how are you? Yeah. Hello, welcome.
Pretty nervous. About voice feminization, I've been training it since September last year. I mostly watched YouTube videos from transvoicelessons.com. I've been actively working on my voice since, I would say, 4 to 3 months. It's kind of hard to tell. And yeah, I mostly struggle with resonance, I would say.
Okay, I do agree with you in that sense. You have a really high pitch, a really soft voice, right? So you're talking up here and stuff. No, you do. If I have to look at the pitch range that you're speaking at, you were saying I've been practicing for 3 to 4 months. Da, 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 da. Let me check my pitch management software. So the way you're speaking. Yeah, I mean, I can da 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 da. It's around A3, so you're around there, right? So very much in the middle of the fem range, right? So your pitch is fine, your voice is soft too, so I assume that you're probably not dealing a lot with really buzzy voices, so that's not an issue for you.
When I try to brighten, when I try to brighten more, then it gets really strained and buzzy. When I do a whisper siren to the best of my abilities, so.
What happens when you do the whisper siren?
Essentially, I start to sound like that. It is
you're straining.
Really hard to talk like that. Yeah.
I know what's happening. What's happening here with your voice? Of course you would. It's not sustainable, is it? So what happens here when you're doing that slide, and I bring up this slide, it's not your closure that's being an issue. Well, sort of. But instead of closing the vocal folds when you're starting on the whisper, you're closing what we call the false vocal folds. We don't see it really well with this color, so let me try this instead. Okay, yeah. So here, those are the true vocal folds. And then you have the false vocal folds, which are basically the distortion vocal folds, right? They actually have a function, right? When you yell, when you scream, when you do weird voices, when you do robot sounds or whatever, you use those false vocal folds. When you cough as well, They are here to kind of overlap and kind of protect the vocal folds from any damage or harm. That's generally what happens. And metal vocalists, typically when they scream, they make a lot of use of the false vocal folds. But in the case of fem voice, we don't want to sound like wah, right? Probably not what we're exactly looking for. And so what's happening is that with a whisper comes the risk, if you're doing it the wrong way, comes the risk of engaging the false vocal folds instead of engaging the true vocal folds. And so what happens, instead of doing you end up doing this. And you get like a distorted voice, right? Which is why you probably brought your resonance back down, because you didn't want to bring your resonance back down. You wanted to remove some of the strain you're feeling. So I have a few strategies to help you with this. Strategy number 1 is you make sure that the whisper you use isn't too strong. That's right, because if you're doing like a whisper that pushes a lot of air at once, like, right, you actually hear it almost sounds like a scream, right? Right? That's because the false vocal folds are kind of coming in instead of the true vocal folds to allow the airflow to be really quick and really strong. Right? So if we start with a whisper that's more gentle, so instead of go for more of a more slow airflow, then we're less at a risk of triggering false vocal fold constriction. Very good. Now with that same whisper, try to go brighter. So instead of doing pots, 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 we want to go and pots, 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 right? We want to not trigger any strain. Give it a try. Okay, very good. Now here. You're like here. Okay. That's more than enough for a fem voice. Cool. And from there, you want to bridge back into full voice. So, okay. Pat that cat.
Pet that cat.
Okay, that's already better.
Very hard to talk like that.
Okay, so right now, that's very hard to talk like that. So right now what's happening is that you're using a very low airflow, right? And with that low airflow, that means that your vocal folds have to kind of work around with that. The less air you push, the harder it is to phonate, especially if your vocal folds are not closing enough. So right now you didn't engage the false vocal folds, but you also didn't quite find closure. If I said that you did the gradient, I said that you did whispery, breathy, and then you kind of are here between breathy and balanced. It's kind of like really like this. You're kind of doing a breathy voice, but you removed so much of the airflow because I asked you to do a really quiet whisper. You removed so much of the airflow that now like your voice is hard to sustain because there's like not enough air. So you want to push a bit more air, right? Like there's an extreme of too much air and too little air, which would be silent, so I can't really show it to you. But yeah, so like try to push a bit more air.
I dropped
Okay,
in resonance,
and careful there. I think you're also like still bringing a little bit of a constriction in, like you're doing this like instead of I recommend you try this. Do like little taps of your voice. Try this out. See that sound? Do you notice that? Do you hear that? That almost whisper, that almost whistle. That's a sign of the false vocal folds coming into play here, right? So let's try and go the other way around. Perhaps whispers are just not for you. There's other ways to brighten your voice, thankfully. Strategy number two is to instead use a creak sound. You know what creak is? It's like this It's like vocal fry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how to do it?
Easily.
Easily, no problem.
Ranges.
Hell yeah, lower range voices. Wow.
Okay, so now what you notice is that with a masculine voice, you get
A really dark whisper.
a really dark creak. Now, with a feminine voice, you can also creak. You've definitely heard like the Valley Girl type of voice, like, oh my god. So there is a creak, but the creak is as opposed to a So the goal here, just like with the whisper, is to brighten that creak. It's a little bit more tricky, but it has a lot more chances to, one, keep your vocal folds closed, and two, keep the false vocal folds out of the way, because it's incredibly hard to do a creak with false vocal folds. Otherwise, you automatically get a distorted sound, right? So it's really easy to hear. But it's asking for like a lot of focus. So like make sure that you really focus. Focus on the sound alone itself and try to make the creak brighter. Give it a try. Okay.
That's
Okay, yes, good.
exactly now. That sounds like where I started. Kinda
Okay.
Kind of Kermity? Not quite, my friend.
So you did go from right? So you did make it brighter, which is really good. Now, what you also want to do is try to brighten the creak, and then go directly from this creaky sound into a more balanced sound. So you can try this. Try and go towards a more balanced sound. Try it out. Yeah, you notice the strain come back in. So maybe try to like little creak tabs, like yeah.
I can't do that. I'm too nervous.
It's okay. No worries. So there's another strategy, like this is, so we have the whisper, which is really important to make the whisper quiet and gentle so that you don't risk triggering false vocal fold constriction, right? But your biggest issue right now is the false vocal folds messing with your voice, right? So I think that you're maybe leaning a little bit too much on that strong whisper, right? And when it comes to higher pitches, well, perhaps like when you raise your resonance, you're also triggering the false vocal constriction. So you want to try different methods. The whisper is definitely more likely to trigger the false vocal folds than the creak. You notice that it's harder to do the creak, right? But it's also because it really asks of you to stay away from the false vocal fold constriction. Okay? Now, there's a third strategy, which is definitely the harder one. Well, not the harder one, but it's a different one, which is just like take a pitch. Let's see, for example, A3. Hold it. You can do it with your mask voice, by the way. It's like darker first. Oh, right? And then you try to make it brighter. You can actually start very dark. Like, oh, pretend you're like doing a yawn. Yeah.
I do this quite often. Like, you mean
Okay.
like staying at the same pitch but changing resonance, right?
Okay, yeah.
Like
How do you
so.
do it? Like,
Sorry.
careful there because you're changing your vowel. Careful there because you're doing like, oh, ah. Okay? You're changing. Different.
I'm changing. Still.
I know. Yes, you are changing the resonance, but you're also changing the vowel shape, right? So you're changing from an ah to an o. An o is always darker than an ah sound. Ooh, ah, ooh. On the same resonance, O is darker. So if you want to really learn the vocal tract, like size reduction, you also want to make sure that you isolate the tongue movement and the lip movement from it. So either do or do but please don't do to a different vowel, because otherwise you're not really doing just a resonance slide. Okay? All right. So whispers, creak, doing this method of doing a balanced voice, but making sure that you choose the right vowel sound, and you should be more than good. You have like quite the toolbox to practice resonance. Ultimately, what happens the most is that you achieve strain when raising your resonance. So you really I really say you should focus on creak the most, because that will help you really relax your voice the most. Okay?
Okay. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
Sifrin. You're very welcome. Keep it up. Record yourself. Listen back to yourself. Keep practicing. And yeah, perhaps I'll see you the next time. Applause for Sifrin. Okay, so, all right. So we are quite a little bit over time. So, Alistair, you need to go, yeah? Yeah, okay. So, no, okay. So I'll just wrap it up for Twitch. Yeah, thank you for following the workshop. Oh God, I hit something. Your chat things. So yeah, if you want to know anything about me, my name is Savvy or Savvy Sav. You can find me on Discord. I teach lessons over there. And yeah, I'll do like a more proper end. But thank you for taking part into this workshop, Twitch audience. I'll be catching you in the next one in 2 weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.